Hi, on October 26, 2013, I took delivery of my Model S. Just 3 days later, I set off on a solo road trip from Mexico to Canada using just the Tesla Superchargers for fuel. How many of you have heard of the Lincoln Highway? The Lincoln Highway was started in 1913 as the first transcontinental road for the automobile, running from New York to San Francisco. It was initiated by businessmen that wanted to promote the market for automobiles and support products. Tesla's planned network of superchargers seems to address a similar purpose. Which comes first, electric vehicles or charging infrastructure? Tesla's answer is both. Supercharger dots connect into routes similar to the Lincoln Highway. The ability to take road trips helped me rationalize my purchase of a Model S. With a son and in-laws in Washington State, I had my first destination. My daughter in Anchorage would have to wait until the Alcan Highway gets electrified. However, there were still a few gaps in Northern California and Southern Oregon as I awaited delivery. This meant spending some time on PlugShare finding ways to fill the void. But, as luck would have it, new superchargers came online in the days just before my delivery. So, at 8:45 a.m. on October 29th, with just 179 miles on the odometer, I took off on a solo journey headed north from the Mexican border. 39 hours later, at midnight on the 30th, I was at the Canadian border. While there, I documented reaching the endpoint, which ironically was 100 years to the day after dedication of the Lincoln Highway. I had stopped at 11 superchargers and spent one night in a motel. The logistic details of my journey can be seen summarized in this spreadsheet. My first charge stop was at Hawthorne. After a couple hours at cruising altitude on the freeway, it was time to come in for a landing. Navigation brought me in from the south on surface streets. In my mind, I was visualizing the Rocket Road address and missed the left onto Jack Northrop Avenue. Once navigation dropped me at my destination, I fumbled my way between the buildings and, after one ask for directions, found my first supercharger. The walk for some lunch was a little over a mile round trip, but it felt good to stretch my legs. My next experience was with Tejon Ranch. Here I failed to note that there are two separate exit ramps, one for east and one for west, so I wound up spending a few minutes looking around on the wrong side of the freeway. I found Harris Ranch without too much problem, but I drove all the way around the resort parking lot before I saw the Chargers behind some bushes at the front entrance. Once connected, I walked over to the Subway convenience store for a sandwich and noticed two more superchargers by the restroom. The trip to Folsom ended with a bad case of range anxiety. An MS driver I met at Tejon Ranch and noted that the leg from Harris to Folsom was a long one, so I did charge up a little extra. I thought 244 miles of range should be fine to cover 192 miles of road. Navigation takes you up Route 99 and other dark country roads. I had just 4 miles of range left when I reached the charger. With hindsight, I think the temperature drop as night fell was my undoing. Getting to Corning was easy. However, it was my first time to use a back-end charger. Note that you don't want your bumper too close to a signpost. The liftgate extends about 6 inches past the bumper as it arcs up. Be careful not to push the open button if you're not watching. I stuck to Reading for my overnight stop as a holdover from my PlugShare planning. It is almost exactly the halfway point. An email announcing the first supercharged trip up the west coast was in my inbox. I woke to frost on the windows and a noticeable reduction in range. This made me a bit nervous after the Folsom experience. I made it to Mount Shasta with 32 miles of range, despite a significant elevation gain. The charger is just off the freeway and close to where navigation drops you as a destination. The Grants Pass charger is located at the far back of the Black Bear restaurant. This is on a one-way road with northbound 5 traffic coming in from the left lanes. You need to quickly merge right through traffic coming from the southbound 5 to turn into the parking lot. I made a loop around the block on my first pass. The Springfield charger is somewhat tucked away in the parking lot of a Holiday Inn. First, there are some tricky lane barriers coming off the freeway. Fortunately, there was no traffic, so I could look around while creeping along. Woodburn is in the far back corner of a small shopping center just off the freeway. Once cruising in the lot, they were not hard to find. The Centralia supercharger is in a side street parking lot. Fortunately, there are good sight lines and I found it with no problem. My last charge before Canada was in Burlington, where they are located in a motel parking lot. I was back in familiar territory, but still missed the access road in the rain and had to make a small loop back. I reached the border in the minutes just before midnight, but did not want to risk any crossing hassle having just temporary registration. I took the last possible exit from the freeway and looked across the border fence into the customs control area. Mission accomplished. Next destination, bed. I learned a lot along the way, especially the value of a plan. My return trip included attending the Tesla Finish Line event in Seattle. My son was with me on the first leg south, so there was a stop at the Portland airport for him to fly home. As an engineer, my primary planning tool is a spreadsheet. With my Greenhorn Supercharger experience under my belt, I have a better idea of a good process. Here's what I laid out for my return trip. Each stop got a row for arrival time and a row for leave time. I used Google Maps to get distance and duration of driving legs. I assumed an hour at each supercharger to replenish the car, eat, chat with other owners, etc. Projected time of day and cumulative distance traveled dictated which stops should be an overnight. One important lesson learned was to no charge stops. Keep in mind that superchargers are not major landmarks visible for miles around. Your brain will be coming down from a high of open road driving to the clutter of random traffic. GPS will get you to a street address, but the charger itself may be tucked into a back corner of a host business parking lot. You must be alert to stop signs, curbs, driveways, pedestrians, and any number of other important distractions, all while looking for something not much bigger than a dorm room refrigerator. At some stops, your bladder may be looking for something else. The Tesla Motors website is a good start for a virtual visit. It has charger locations and hours of amenities. Hawthorne, for example, has a reception area and restrooms, but with some hour restrictions. Check out the map to see what is in the neighborhood. It will be your home for about an hour, and, depending upon your travel plans, you may be visiting here more than once. Note food options. Sometimes it may be wise to visit a drive-thru before stopping to charge. You can even practice a virtual drive-up. An easy way to do this is to right-click the map about a mile away from your supercharger to set a starting point for directions. Then, select the 3D button to see a virtual fly-in. This can make your first visit a déjà vu experience. The next lesson learned was what goes into calculating charge requirements. How many range miles you need depends upon a number of factors. First is the distance in road miles, which is different from crowfly miles. Then comes the elevation profile, outside temperature, climate control, speed, basic driving style, and maybe even vampire losses if you make an intermediate stop. There is a third-party tool to make these calculations for you at evtripper.com. Using it to predict range needed from Harris Ranch to Folsom is only 4 miles off from what I actually experienced. The tool can even be accessed from the car's web browser. But what if you are making these calculations seat of the pants while looking at the console? The first thing to note is that clicking on a supercharger icon will show you the crowfly miles. Only once you select Navigate will you see the road miles. Elevation profiles are familiar to hikers. Tools such as Google Earth can be used to preview routes between superchargers. It can be fun to look at these in advance and see where you'll be blasting up a hill or collecting electrons on the other side via regenerative braking. Outside temperature affects battery management and cabin comfort. This can change over the course of a leg based upon time of day and geography. Nights are usually cooler than days. This closely ties to climate control settings. Keeping the cabin warm while it is cold outside takes considerable energy. You can enable range mode if you want to minimize the impact of climate control. Driving smooth and slow is the common mantra of anyone trying to maximize mileage. Cruise control is a great means of speed management, but few buy a Model S with an intention of poking along the highway. A look at your own personal average watt-hour consumption is a good way to judge the impact of your driving style. Vampire losses can have an impact if you stop for a prolonged time along the way. My rude awakening in Reading was an example of that. If you don't want to strain your brain, 30% more range miles than road miles seems to be a safe rule of thumb for me. If your battery has room for more, you can bump up the charge for a better safety margin. Note when you pull into a supercharger to pick a different number from anyone else if possible. A and B slots share equipment, so charge time increases when kilowatts are split. Always be sure to check your phone app as soon as you walk away from your car. It provides a good double check that all is well. You don't want to come back after lunch to find there was a bad connection. The app also lets you know if there's time for dessert or another coffee refill. So, what did I learn about Supercharger road tripping? Plan. Preview the Supercharger site and environment. Familiarity makes it feel like home. Take windshield washing supplies. There are no squeegee buckets at Superchargers. Choose a different slot number from anyone else. Watch backing in so you can open the liftgate without hitting a sign. Charge for road miles plus the extras. Verified charging. And use the phone app to monitor progress. Now I'm looking forward to a cross-country trip using Superchargers. While it might not exactly follow the Lincoln Highway route, I did drive it a bit to utilize the Folsom Supercharger. I'm having a blast driving a Model S. I hope you are too.